The sky's fallen, the world of international students has collapsed.
一觉醒来，留学生的天要塌了。
I woke up to find the world of international students has collapsed. We spent hundreds of thousands or even millions to study abroad, only to come back and find ourselves shut out by the civil service system. Suddenly, the internet is flooded with news about international students. Once envied as overseas returnees or international students, they're now being called losers, gray market goods, and even spies. Just a few days ago, the Shanghai 2026 annual Recruitment of Outstanding University Graduates announcement was released. After reading the entire document, it turns out that international students have nothing to do with it. Selection recruits refers to the Chinese Communist Party's organizational departments recruiting outstanding university graduates to work at the grassroots level. These recruits are trained as reserve cadres for future leadership positions. Selection recruits are part of the civil service system in China and are reserved by the provincial party committees as future leadership candidates. In the past 2 years, the selection policy has been tightening. Last year, many provinces and cities closed the path for international students to participate in the selection process. Now, even Shanghai, which was once friendly to international students, has taken harsh measures. International students who are eager to serve their country and support the system have ultimately been left behind. This year, the biggest change in Shanghai's selection policy is outstanding graduates from high-level universities abroad, particularly those from universities listed in Shanghai's list of institutions where returnees can directly settle, are eligible. Among these, top universities from the US and UK are most common, including the University of Hong Kong, Chinese University of Hong Kong, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and City University of Hong Kong. International students and domestic students now share the same 6 professional categories, including comprehensive management, politics and law, information technology, finance and economics, urban construction, and health. However, international students will not have any opportunities in the 2026 Shanghai selection. In fact, starting from 2024, many provinces and cities across China have already begun to reject international students for civil service recruitment. In 2025, Guangdong's recruitment policy for outstanding university students will no longer include universities like Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford, removing nearly 60 overseas institutions from the selection list. Only graduates from some domestic universities can apply. In Shandong's 2025 recruitment announcement, both targeted and regular recruitment have removed graduates from foreign universities or overseas universities. The 2025 Beijing announcement shows that international students are not eligible for targeted recruitment. Although Beijing's excellent training program is still open for applications, the requirements have become stricter. International graduate students must have an undergraduate degree from one of China's 43 double first-class universities, or one of its 25 universities with first-class disciplines. The difference between targeted recruitment and the excellent training program is that the former is a civil service position, while the latter is for enterprise or public institutions. In other words, in provinces and cities with strong economic development, the doors to civil service recruitment for international students have already been closed, and the pathway for returning international students to enter the public sector is gradually narrowing. The selection recruits have always been regarded as the pinnacle of civil service exams. Central selection refers to the central government departments recruiting public servants from top domestic universities graduating students. Data shows that in 2006, a ministry recruited 4 people through the central selection, and by 2025, it has been publicly reported that these 4 individuals have all risen to deputy department head level positions. Becoming a selection recruit not only accelerates promotion, but is also considered a path to a promising career. Learn well, then serve has been a long-standing dream for many Chinese people. This is the coveted Golden Rice Bowl. However, there are several requirements for selection recruits. Students must either be members of the Communist Party, hold student leadership positions at the provincial or university level, or have received school-level or higher rewards, such as Outstanding Student or Excellent Student cadre. This shows that the selection process for these recruits is highly political, and many international students lacking domestic school leadership or participation in party and youth activities naturally do not meet the criteria. Additionally, geopolitical tensions have made authorities highly cautious. And as the CCP's reserve cadre for the future, selection recruits are expected to have a strong political background with a firm belief in the Communist Party and good academics. A popular shortcut in recent years has been for undergraduates to pursue a one-year master's program at top universities in the UK, US, Australia, or Canada, turning into graduates from prestigious institutions before returning to China to take the civil service exam. However, this one-year master's degree has faced criticism as a watered-down degree. Furthermore, as many top domestic universities and excellent students are unable to meet that criteria, international students who may carry political risks are no longer considered. It's clear that the door to selection recruits is not just closing to international students, but is also tightening for most domestic undergraduates and postgraduates. Many places have explicitly restricted the selection scope to specific top universities, and the list of eligible universities has been further reduced. As a result, undergraduates and postgraduates from universities not on the list have lost the opportunity to apply. In some provinces, the selection recruit program has completely excluded undergraduates and is only open to graduate students. The announcement for the 2025 National Civil Service exam also clearly states that for 2025 graduates with master's or doctoral degrees, the age limit for applications has been relaxed to 40 years old, compared to the previous limit of 35 years old. In conclusion, the path to entering the public system is becoming increasingly difficult due to higher demands and growing competition. Not long ago, graduates from prestigious overseas universities were highly sought after, but now their job prospects are steadily declining. In recent years, there have been frequent reports of Stanford PhD holders applying for local government positions in Anhui, and Harvard master's graduates working in the Education Bureau of Hangzhou. These cases reflect the significant shift in job opportunities for returnees. Studies also show that the public sector remains one of the top career goals for international students. According to a report jointly released by the China World Youth Summit and Liepin, 17.7% of international students listed public service exams as their first choice after graduation, and 74.4% of international students acknowledged the existence of the returnee public service exam craze. Among those choosing to find a full-time job, 84% plan to return to China, and 45% of them see state-owned enterprises and central enterprises as their ideal destination. However, the public sector and large state-owned enterprises are no longer unconditionally favoring returnees. In 2025, China Huaneng, a major Chinese power company, clearly stated in its campus recruitment announcement that students graduating in 2024 from one-year master's programs in places like Hong Kong, Macau, the UK, Australia, and Singapore will in principle not be included in the recruitment scope. One-year master's degrees, often criticized as watered down, are among the first to be excluded. The root cause of this is the profound changes in the overall environment. Domestic higher education has continued to expand, leading to a rapid increase in the supply of talent. Data shows that the average years of education for China's new labor force has exceeded 14 years, with the number of students in higher education reaching 250 million. The number of university graduates is at an all-time high, with over 12 million expected in 2025. Meanwhile, the returnee population is also growing rapidly. According to data from the Ministry of Education, between 1978 and 2019, a total of 6.6 million people studied abroad, with 4.2 million returning to China, accounting for more than 86%. In 2021 alone, over 1 million people returned to China. In this situation, where there are too many young people and too few opportunities, the advantage of being a returnee is quickly diminishing, and the cost-effectiveness has significantly decreased. Both public sector and state-owned enterprise recruitment are tightening the entry points for international students. In light of the domestic situation in China, a study abroad consultant shared some candid advice with the families of international students.
I've been in study abroad consulting for 10 years and have interviewed dozens of international students in the past 6 months. Currently, I managed 4 study abroad groups with around 500 members each. From what I've seen, ordinary families should avoid returning to China after graduation. Some students feel that many new developments are happening in China and things are more dynamic compared to the rigid way foreigners work. It seems like there are many opportunities, and they are eager to return and make a name for themselves. But once they return and start working, they realize that the reality is not what they expected.
He said that first, overseas work experience has now been seen as a disadvantage by employers. The domestic market in China is developing in its own way, and it's hard to align with the systems and work logic of foreign countries. Basically, overseas work experience is not needed. Many companies assume you're just an idealistic, rigid, and difficult to manage rich kid, expensive, and not easy to deal with. Second, it's hard to adapt to the workplace culture in China. You can't turn off your phone after 7 p.m., and working overtime is almost unavoidable. Work apps mean that you're on standby 24/7. Overtime pay is available, but you need approval. Are you brave enough to ask for it? Personal boundaries is seen as the same as being a workplace loser. One student who went to an investment bank for an interview was asked, "How many boyfriends do you have? Can your family afford a house in Shanghai? Can you accept unethical or illegal behaviors?" Third, in many industries, there's no real business logic. They're just pushing cheap labor as hard as they can. It's all about speed, starting early with buying traffic, viral marketing, and price wars to outdo the competition. In the end, the entire ecosystem is destroyed, and consumers get used to taking advantage. But then they realize they're still losing, because the whole system is broken and no one can benefit from it. The consultant concluded,
These examples show why ordinary families should think twice before having their children return home from studying abroad. Who should go back to China then? Well, it's those students who don't need to work, come from wealthy families, have industry connections, or have resources. Also, those who are highly adaptable to gray areas and want to build big businesses. And lastly, those who are stubborn and don't want to listen to advice.
So, besides those who study abroad to inherit a family business, or those with a clear goal to enter the system with a watered-down degree, why are so many international students still choosing to return home? Do they really believe that entering a state-owned or central enterprise in China offers a better future than staying abroad? Here's a real example shared by a study abroad consultant.
家长带着孩子这几年过得跟个要饭的一样。
A few days ago, a mother of a University College London undergraduate called me in the middle of the night. She was crying uncontrollably, saying her child felt terrible about the final exams. They had already taken several exams and felt like they were going to fail. Her child was collapsing in London. This mother, from a regular working family in Shanghai, has an annual income of about 300,000 RMB. She had sent her child to a good international school in Shanghai for a better education. The school had a high success rate of getting students into top UK universities. They'd calculated that after graduating from a prestigious school, maybe their child could become a well-known entrepreneur. They thought studying abroad could help them change their social status and make a good return on their investment. However, when the mother sent her child to the international school, she realized things were more difficult than expected. The tuition fee was just a small part of the costs. The bigger expenses came later. Without extra tutoring or participation in projects to boost their background, it would be impossible for the child to get into a top university. As a result, the mother took her child to several international training institutions in Shanghai, where courses cost hundreds or even thousands of RMB per hour. The mother was shocked. She then did everything she could to secure free trial lessons for her child. Eventually, her child successfully got into a mathematics-related program at UCL. After that, the mother repeated her tactics, making phone calls and using connections to get career services and teach her child how they can find an internship. Eventually, the child did manage to secure a good internship in London, which saved the parent thousands in guidance fees. However, studying in a mathematics-related program at UCL was already stressful, and with the parent constantly pushing the child to gain more internship experience, it only added to the pressure. The child couldn't handle the stress any longer and directly confronted the parents, saying that they were certain to fail, and not just one or two subjects. According to UCL's rules, the student wouldn't have the opportunity for a retake. The school would require them to pay another year's tuition to retake the course. The parent was devastated, feeling that after all their hard work to get this far, their child had given up, resented the parents for being poor, and asked, "Why did you send me to study in London?" This case illustrates the child most likely won't be able to stay in London, but when they return to China, it would feel like starting from scratch. This isn't an isolated case, but reflects the mindset of a significant portion of Chinese families. The child carries the entire family's hopes on their shoulders. Therefore, most international students returning to China aren't doing so to serve the country, but because they couldn't make it abroad and have no choice but to come back. In reality, the number of Chinese students studying abroad is not as large as people imagine. A blogger revealed the truth behind it.
全网都在晒留学，
Everyone is showing off their study abroad experience, but I'm going to tell you a heart-wrenching truth. The real number of Chinese who have studied abroad is still less than 0.7% of the population. Since the reform and opening up over 40 years ago, the total number of students studying abroad has just surpassed 10 million. But last year alone, the number of students taking the national college exam, Gaokao, reached 13.5 million. That means the total number of students who have studied abroad is still fewer than those who take the Gaokao in 1 year. What's even more painful is that not even 20% of families in top-tier cities like Beijing and Shanghai can easily afford to send their children abroad. So why does it feel like everyone is studying abroad? This is the bias effect of social media, selectively amplifying certain reports. People keep seeing 5-star study abroad lives, but in reality, it's only 0.7% of people making up over 99% of the voices in these stories. Every international student is carrying their family's hopes. The real goal of studying abroad isn't to escape the intense competition at home, but to return stronger and change the rules of the game. Analysts point out that after the CCP took power, Chinese students began going abroad in the 1980s, and until around 2000, over 90% of them were on government-sponsored scholarships. These government-sponsored students were essentially spies, which was part of the CCP's infamous 1,000 Talents program, though the plan went far beyond 1,000 people. These students received special training to hide their CCP membership. After 2000, the number of privately funded students gradually increased. Among these students, many came from families from within the political system, or from families who had profited from collusion between government and business. Under the brainwashing control of organizations, groups, like government-sponsored student groups and consular-run student associations, they formed the mainstream group of Chinese students abroad. This is why we often see the disgraceful behavior of overseas 50-cent army and Chinese ultra-nationalists online. These people are mostly from this group, and many of them have plans to return to China. In reality, only a small number of international students come from ordinary working-class families. These students do not want to return to China, but they may not necessarily have an academic advantage. Instead, they bear the weight of their families' hopes, aiming to change their destiny through studying abroad. Why have cities like Shanghai and Beijing recently introduced policies cutting off international students from entering the public system? The fundamental reason is the Trump administration's heavy crackdown on international students this year, revoking many Chinese students' visas and even green cards. A large number of government-funded students were deported or directly stopped at customs. Many of these targeted students are anxious and preparing to leave the U.S. These returnees, who have lost value in the eyes of the CCP, often come from families with some background, and some were originally sent by the CCP. Their resettlement becomes a major issue. The authorities have implemented a blanket policy, which is more about sending a political signal, urging these returnees not to come back to China and not to burden an already struggling government. Another reason is the large-scale withdrawal of foreign companies from China. Many government-funded students used to return home and join foreign companies, infiltrating management and engaging in espionage activities. This channel has now been cut off. State-owned enterprises and central enterprises are in an even worse situation, as they can't even absorb top domestic talent, let alone returning international students. In April this year, Gree Electric's CEO, Dong Mingzhu, made a shocking statement, saying her company would never hire a returnee because international students might be spies. Many may have misunderstood her. What she likely meant wasn't that international students are foreign spies. On the contrary, as a business leader, she certainly knows that Chinese government-funded students are essentially spies. Now that these students are returning home, who would want these unemployed spies? Europe, Japan, and Australia are following the US's lead. A large group of students who can't succeed in the US, Europe, or Japan are now in a difficult situation. After being brainwashed by the CCP, they can't truly integrate into Western society and may be deported at any time for pro-CCP statements. Returning home to work in the public system or central enterprises is now a shattered dream. The once envied returnees have become an awkward group, struggling to adapt to the environment after coming back, but unable to change the game rules. Of course, those who went abroad with pure academic intentions, who genuinely sought knowledge, will likely not be negatively affected. In the free environment abroad, they can learn the truths that are hidden behind the CCP's walls, helping them break free from the brainwash. Graduates who are accomplished and grateful will always be welcomed wherever they go.